Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
There I am again. You can tell when Amelia's not with me, keeping me in line. Anyway, welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from beautiful New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who have been a part of our journey since day one. Thank you, Folgers. We couldn't do it without you, nor would we want to. Also, big thank you to Justice Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. Check him out anywhere on your favorite music streaming platforms. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music. Perfect fit for us, so check him out. Also, big thank you, Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes, of course, in the horror genre. So tonight, we're really excited. We are welcoming Mindy Tautfest for the very first time. I've really been looking forward to this. I just resonate with this lady so much. Man, she's amazing. She's going to be discussing her book, Dying to Meet Them, One Woman's Incredible Journey from N.D.E to U.A.P. And she's going to talk about her own experiences in what she calls the void. She's going to go on to discuss her healing, internal journey of spiritual growth, investigation, and research into the correlations that have been found between UFO and near-death experiencers, especially during the Omega Project, while taking it a step further. And she describes it all in great detail. She's just incredible. Read the book. Incredible. I can just say that right there. Thank you. Thank you and welcome. Really appreciate you guys. I'm glad that you enjoy the show. It's very exciting. So thank you. Thank you. So buckle in, guys. Remember, we're simultaneously on 8 different platforms. Roku TV does not have a chat room. Don't look for one. It's not there. If you're on Rumble, it will come through to the soundboard. If you are in any of the YouTube pages or Facebook pages, we'll come to the soundboard. But we go to the beat of Mindy's drum, not ours. This is whatever Mindy wants to go with it. So I may periodically put up some of your comments. I may... we'll put little check marks next to any questions or comments. And of course, if she sees something that she wants to address, she will definitely do so. So it's pretty much carte blanche. Thank you. Thank you. I see everybody chiming in. So without further ado, the lovely Mindy Tautfest. Hello.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. I've really been looking forward to this. I really enjoyed your book, I have to say. Just really, really hit me. I know I emailed you and I said, I just wanted to hug you because I'm a mom. I'm a mom. And I would totally was sympathizing with that, but I don't want to get ahead of everything. So I just want to start wherever you would like to start, that led you on your, I guess, on this journey, because it's pretty much what it's been.
It has been a journey.
Yes. So I leave it to you.
Start by saying thank you so much for writing me. I really enjoyed your email, and just I love hearing from people that connect with it, because so many people feel like they're just alone and out in these different types of encounters by themselves, and no one will understand. And just the amount of outpouring of love and compassion, and just, people understanding exactly what I went through, at having gone through similar things themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful to be able to find community with others who truly understand, and even those that can just sympathize. And we'll get into some of that
Yes.
with my encounter. Not being such a happy one, I was met with a lot of blame and a lot of shame, especially from the communities that I once relied upon so much. And that was pretty disappointing. So that's been part of what I really would like to do, is connect with people and let them know that they're not alone, and that there is no shame in having some of these more scary encounters. So I guess with that, if you want me to, I can go ahead and jump into
Yes, please. I'm going to
kind
put
of
up
led up to everything.
we're going to put this up here just for now. Let me just get the banner off just so people know what we are talking about tonight. And please start.
Yeah, so my encounter was on November 8th of 2016. It was the big election day between Trump and Hillary, and we're approaching the new election day with, similar heightened emotions and whatnot. At the time, we had moved back out to northern Oklahoma, and we're living on a 300-acre wheat farm, where my father-in-law was living, and he was needing some help. And my husband, being the big, strong farm guy he is, he said, well, we'll move back out here. And I mean, there's nothing out there besides just, rows and rows of wheat. And so the only housing that we could find was this cheap little dumpy trailer house. And so that's what we moved into with our two children. At the time, my husband was a Southern Baptist minister. And when we were living on the farm, he went ahead and took a job working at the small school that he had actually graduated from. He graduated with like 17 people, to explain how remote we really were.
Wow. That's
And so,
remote. Right.
yeah. And so my children, they were about 5 and 7 at the time. My daughter Aneshka was 5 and JJ was 7. And so they were attending the elementary there where my husband actually went. And actually his father had gone before. So
Wow.
the family's pretty rooted there in that area. So anyways, we were out there and life was good. We were working hard on the farm. And that morning, John got up and, loaded the kids up. He drove the school bus. So the kids hopped on the bus and they took off. And by the time I got up and around, I went and, brushed my teeth, and I saw that my face was a little bit swollen. So I took a picture and sent it to my husband and said, hey, face is a little bit swollen. I'm not in any pain. It may be an allergic reaction or something. I'll go ahead and take a Benadryl and go hop in the shower and see if that helps clear it up. And so I went about my day. And by that afternoon, it was probably about 4 o'clock, I got out of the shower. And of course, I'm checking to see if there's any exit polls or anything coming out yet. And we were going to take the kids and go vote. I'm not saying who we were going to vote
Nah,
for.
don't do that. Yeah.
I am completely apolitical at this point. Don't judge me off of anything that you believe I would have thought before. But so I was kind of checking and seeing what what was going on. And that's when I heard what sounded like a large gunshot that went off in my head. And at the time, my first instinct was, my God, I've been shot, because there had been coyote hunters there around the area. Just in the days prior, we had noticed them out there. And I thought, my God, they've shot through this flimsy old trailer house and shot me in the head.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to sit there and assess, and I'm realizing this is catastrophic. This is really, really bad. And I'm trying to figure out if there's blood running down, just what kind of damage there really is going on. prior to this, I had worked as an ICU nurse, so I knew, kind of how to assess myself as I
You're
was just
lucky.
sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that I realized, no, this isn't a gunshot because there was no exterior kind of damage. And that's when I realized, okay, this has got to be a brain aneurysm. And I knew that that was a possibility for me. I have a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's, some people may have heard of Marfan, and it's kind of a cousin of Marfan syndrome, which causes aneurysms. And
Right.
at the time, they had told me, no, you've got hypermobility type, you're not in any danger. They, all my doctors followed me very closely, but they didn't really think I was in any danger, even though most of the people on my father's side had died of aneurysms, different types of aneurysms.
Red flag, red flag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's where I instantly turned, was, okay, this is more than likely what's happened. And as I'm realizing this, my head starts kind of bobbing. And I thought, oh my God, if I lose consciousness, I'm not going to survive this. Like I knew that was going to be it. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the front door open. I'm waiting for my husband and kids to come in, and they always come in and they give me big hugs and kisses and be like, mommy, and tell me about their day. And, it's kind of a routine of ours. And so I was waiting for them to come home any minute. And as my head's dropping, I'm realizing, my God, they're going to run in and they're going to find me dead.
Oh boy.
At this young age, I could not cope with that as a mother. And I'm sure you understand, as a mother, just the horror that it turns to in your mind. And I instantly turned to my religious beliefs and started praying, God, get me through this. God, if I can survive this and not be a huge burden, please let me get through this. Don't let my kids find my body. I don't want them to have to live with that. And I'm thinking of my husband, and my husband is the gentle one of the relationship, and his heart is so tender. He would never get over it. And I'm just praying. I turned to deep, deep sorrow and prayer. And as I was doing that, it seemed like a long time, that as soon as I stopped and I took note, I started looking around. That's when I realized I was in darkness, and I wasn't in any more pain. I wasn't, I was more curious than anything. And so my first instinct was to put my hand out in front of my face and see if I could see it, because I was trying to assess, is it dark or is there nothing here? Where am I? And I couldn't see my hand. And that's what you see on the front of the book, is the hand in the darkness. And when I couldn't see it, my next instinct was to start clapping. So in the void.
Right.
And so I'm clapping and I realize I can't. I didn't have any hands. And that's when the realization first really hit me that, my God, I've crossed over. I'm completely dead at this point. Because you hear a lot of people say that they had kind of the exit where they're lifting up and they can see their lifeless body and they see the earth disappearing. I didn't have any of that. I think I was in such deep prayer and such deep, just sorrow, that I didn't even notice until I was already over there. So as I'm sitting there, I'm trying to assess the situation. And I'm thinking of my religious beliefs. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be coming up on judgment. So I'm praying. I'm in the void and I'm praying. I'm saying, God, Jesus, be my righteousness. Obviously, something is separating me. Why am I not instantly in heaven? I've always been taught,
yes,
absent from the body is present with the Lord. That didn't happen. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, there's something coming up. I've got to be getting ready for judgment. And that kind of freaked me out, because I'm a high anxiety person anyway.
Right. That doesn't help. Yeah.
No, it didn't. And so I'm starting to freak out. The longer and longer that I'm there, I'm realizing something's wrong because there's no tunnel of light. There's no family coming to greet me. Jesus isn't showing. Nothing is happening. And so that's when the panic really started sitting in for me, was because none of my religious teachings had prepared me for where I was and what I was experiencing. And it was all out of my control. And so I think just that loss of control, the not knowing what to expect, I was in complete just anxiety overload. I was freaking out. So I start kind of turning inwards and going, okay, am I going to be here forever? What has landed me here? Why am I in the darkness by myself? And I start, and again, you hear some people saying that they have a life review. Mine wasn't like that. Mine was more of a kind of inner searching and a reflection of my life.
That's
And
actually,
yeah. Yeah. Well, and it would almost be like sitting here and thinking, of your past life, what you've done up till this point. And that's kind of what I was doing, just kind of looking over different instances of my life. And I thought, okay, I've done good. I've loved people. I've, been a pretty good person. I've loved the Lord. I've done everything that I can think of to land myself in heaven. But it was impressed on me, you haven't loved yourself. And whenever I realized that, and I want your listeners to understand, it's not in an ego sense, not like, I'm the best.
right. What am I doing in the darkness? I should be here. sitting to the right of, yeah.
I think some people have taken that as, oh, well, love yourself as an ego thing. And it wasn't that at all. It was more of, I have always held myself back because I haven't thought myself worthy. And that was really the main impression that was put on me over there. Once I realized that and I accepted that and I realized, okay, yeah, I've totally lacked in loving myself, that it instantly changed. And up behind me came a male presence. And I talk about this in the book. I couldn't identify him. It wasn't like it was Jesus. It wasn't Muhammad or Allah, or it wasn't an alien. It wasn't an angel. I don't know what it didn't feel human to me. Okay. But I couldn't tell you what it was, but it was definitely a male presence. And when he spoke to me, it was just instant to me. It wasn't like I heard anything. It was straight to my being. I almost absorbed his thoughts, and my thoughts were absorbed into him. I guess kind of like telepathic communication. That he came up to me and he said, "You're not going to be here forever." And as soon as he did that, it was instant relief. I thought, okay, someone's here with me.
Hallelujah. I'm not saying.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm not going to be here forever. And that's great news. And so I just had to trust whatever he was telling me, because other than that, I was lost by myself here. And once he told me that, then we started sailing off to the left. And as we did, I could see this purple glow in the distance. And as we kind of got closer and closer to it, I could make out all of these intersecting lines that were bright pink, and they glowed as they joined up. It was bright yellow where the junctions were. And as we got closer, just that radiation of that light, it just gave off love. And he stopped there and he showed it to me and he told me that's the fabric of humanity. And I just remember kind of sitting there and just taking it in. It was so important and so beautiful. And he kind of indicated that's not for you right now. And so I was a little bit heartbroken. I didn't know where we were going. And we went ahead and sailed past it. And next thing I know, I was back in my body. And it was almost like I was slammed in. Some people say they enter through the mouth or through the top of the head. I just felt like I was slammed in, and I woke with a start, and it was almost like a computer rebooting, like a
Incredible.
as I came back.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. So my next kind of memory is waking up, and I was slumped over on the couch onto my right side, and I could hear kind of the TV in the background, kind of muffled, and I couldn't make out what it was said. And my
Mhm.
head was buzzing, and it felt like hot lava just kind of flowing through my skull. It was a horrendous,
Mm.
horrendous feeling.
Right.
And I kept trying to sit up. And every time I'd sit up, I'd fall over. And I thought, okay, well, I'm back and I've got to get help. So I'm looking around frantically, and I was able to find my cell phone where I was able to call my father-in-law, who was right across the street working in the wheat field right in front of us. And
Mhm.
so within 60 seconds or so, he was standing in my living room, and I was still kind of slurring words and whatnot. But he
Mhm.
sat with me until my husband and kids got home about 10 minutes later. And they loaded me up in the car, and we took the 30-mile journey out to the hospital.
Wow. So you're kind of close with your children
I
coming
did.
in. You came back in time, so it looks like you had a little bit of intervention there as well.
Absolutely. Well, and people have asked me about my religious beliefs since then, and
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to necessarily go deep into that, but
I have
um,
to leave that to you. That's your show. Right.
they've obviously changed.
Mhm.
I can't say that I've lost faith or anything. I've
Mhm.
lost faith in the sense that I don't have to have it now. I mean, I when I was over in the void, I was surrounded by God. I was surrounded by the source. And that's one point that I didn't go into, was I almost felt like I was in an invisible box and was being held separate from everything that was ever in creation. I mean, from beginning to end, everything that was, is, and will be was all in its primordial state over there, just right before the blink of coming into existence.
Mm.
And it was all God. It was immense. It was bigger than I could have ever imagined before. So I know that there's a source where we come from. I
Yes.
know that we continue on. I don't have to have faith in that sense anymore.
Mm.
It's my appreciation of it is so much more now than I could have ever had before, from my understanding
Mhm. It's
before.
quite humbling. I would have to feel that it would be a very humbling experience, it's something that just puts you literally on your knees and you just realize, like, I'm a part of all of this.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that we're all connected, that was kind of what I took from the fabric of humanity. It
Mm,
was the best of all
mhm,
of humanity, and it almost felt like a conglomeration of souls just giving off this love and light. And
mm,
I thought, my God, it looked like the cosmic web. And that was before I'd ever seen a picture of the cosmic web. I described
mm,
it as a nebula, or it looked like a
mhm,
map of brain neurons. And if you see the comparison between brain neurons and the
mhm.
cosmic web, they're
Same.
almost identical. Yes.
It is. But it's funny you say that because when my uncle passed, he came, to me and I said, "Is it everything you hoped for?" He was very intuitive and he always had his ideas. And he said, "It's more." He said, "There's so many lights." And I said, "What are the lights?" He goes, "Energy. We're everything. It's all one." And to hear that, it was just like, and I've had so many people since, as they're describing different types of experiences, and everything it is exactly like you describe it. It's just like all these tiny little lights all connected, um, and it's just like, I'm like, "Wow," I was almost envious there for a moment. I was just like, "I got to see that," you know?
Well, I wouldn't be envious. Well, I think we're all
Well, I'll get there eventually. I
yeah,
want the lights, darn it. Yeah. Just,
yeah. Well, I mean, just
mm,
having an awareness of it now,
yes.
that I it's almost like a bilocation. It exists over there, but it exists here on this earth, that
Mhm.
we're all connected by this love and light that, and I've never been a love and light person. I've
Right.
never been,
Mm.
I'm much more of a realist, but it truly is. That is the essence of who we are and what our spirits are.
Mhm.
And we can be living in that love and light now,
Mm.
and it carries on. It
Yes.
carries on with us over onto the other side, and it radiates. I
Mhm.
mean, it was beautiful, but there were times when I was absolutely terrified. Um, and that's one of the things that I really struggled with afterwards, to go into what happened after the aneurysm. We ended up going to the little, county hospital 30 miles away. We got there. They ran one scan of me and they said, well, it looks like maybe your neck shifted or maybe you have a migraine. And when I had arrived, my arm was still hanging limp. I was still slurring my words. I had had a
Mm.
stroke. And they sent me home with no Tylenol, no nothing, and just said, if it continues, come back. And so I came back several times, and they started treating me almost like I was a drug seeker. And I would tell them,
Oh boy.
do not give me medicine. Find out what's wrong with me, because I literally crossed over. Something terrible has happened. And that burning in my skull, it stayed with me for the first 2 to 3
Mm.
years. I mean, it did not let up. And it's called the suicide disease, where you have that burning in your skull. It's
Mm.
horrendous.
Mm.
Um,
I
and
can imagine.
they just sent me home. And so finally, after 2 years of putting up with that, I went to the neurologist. He, just kind of discounted me and said, well, you have migraines. And so I finally told my husband, look, if they don't figure out what's happened to me, I can't survive another one if this happens
Mm.
again, because I never had the same big pop again. It was just that continuous burning. I was passing out every day. I was not well. And I think just kind of my grit,
Oh,
kind
2
of.
years, man. That's just that's ridiculous for you to live like that.
I'm not a dramatic person. I can be dramatic, okay? Don't let me tell you I'm not
Can't
dramatic.
we all?
I can
Yeah.
be dramatic, but whenever it comes to stuff like that, I kind of tend to downplay my pain. And so I think the fact that I'm a woman played into it.
Mhm.
We all know kind of how women are discounted as anxiety. And
Sure.
the fact that I wasn't, screaming and hollering with pain, they just kind of said, well, you look fine to me, and they'd send me out the door. So after 2 years, I said, let's move back down to Oklahoma City and get some real doctors in here and see what's
Mm.
happened. And that's when I put this in the book, and I thought it was just amazing at the time. It was right as the pandemic was kind of starting. It was 2019-ish. And we had moved into a house here in Oklahoma City, and we had like a Roku or something, a little
Right.
Fire Stick or something like that. And we had
Yeah.
plugged it in, and they had like the little 30-second commercials. Well, every single one was for Integris Baptist Hospital System, and it had like heroes of the hospital.
Mhm.
And they
Synchronicity, I'd say. But
they had showed this young blonde nurse, just like
Mhm.
me. And she was like, I went into the shower and I leaned back to rinse the shampoo out of my hair. And I heard this loud pop in my head, and I dropped to the ground and my arm went limp, and I knew I was having a stroke. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened to her? So I'm looking it up online. What happened to this nurse and blah, blah, blah. And so I was able to find her whole story. And what came to find out that she had had a vertebral artery dissection, which is something I had never heard of. I was
Mm.
a LPN, a low paid nurse, or
Mm.
a
Yeah,
licensed practitioner.
you're right. Right.
So I wasn't an RN, but I had never heard of a vertebral artery dissection. So I'm looking it up, and it says the number one cause of it is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is what I have. And so my next step was, let me find this doctor. So I look up the doctor, and she had me in within 2 weeks to have a full scan where they put the wire up in my brain, did an angiogram, and injected the dye. And I actually have a picture, it's in the back of the book, where the interventional radiologist had taken a picture with a cell phone because he couldn't believe what he was looking at. I had 2 huge rips there in my right vertebral artery that had formed pseudoaneurysms, but after 2 years, they couldn't do anything. So they just kind of put me on blood thinners and said, well,
Wow.
you done good. So,
What do you
you
say
know,
to that? I mean, it's like, are you not like a walking time bomb essentially with this? Or
I mean, to some degree, I guess,
yeah,
but you know, I can't live like that. I can't
no,
live in that
no,
fear.
no,
I
no.
I
But I
know.
mean, you went 2 years like that to how did you feel when they looked at you and they said, "We can't do anything about it now?" Like, it was bloody traumatic, and it's like, not so much now because 'cause you've coped and, I think things had a
Right.
way of settling down, and obviously, it was not your time. That was made clear to you, and they just booted you right back down into your body, rather abruptly, um,
Yeah.
but to find out that there's nothing that they can do.
Well, and during that 2 years, I had kind of it I was very fundamentalist Christian. And
Right.
so Reiki let demons in, and I'm sure
Mm,
some of your listeners probably believe that.
right.
I
Right.
believe that kind of stuff wholeheartedly.
Mm,
And so I was very fearful of anything that was esoteric or,
mhm,
not mainstream.
mhm,
But at that depth, I started kind of intuitively meditating, and I would feel this almost like a blue light surrounding my head and my shoulders. And it was healing every time that I would kind of go into this deep concentration of healing light on me. I would feel better. And I had lost my hearing. I lost 90% of my hearing, so I wear hearing aids now.
mhm,
But and that's never come back. But one of the things I had looked up was for tinnitus, and I found 432 hertz music. So I started listening to that,
mhm,
and just that energy. One of the videos that I came across, I actually have it in my presentation that I do about my whole book, and it gave off that same feeling as what the Fabric of Humanity gave off.
hmm,
And it's the only one that I've ever instantly I felt that same power. So I would listen to that over and over and almost connect with that love and that light to try to heal me, because that's all I had. I
mhm,
had no doctors, on my side. Thank God my husband is understanding, because here he has his wife laying on the couch for 2 months or 2 years.
right.
And I mean, I wasn't cleaning the house. I wasn't cooking dinner. I wasn't doing anything. I was laying on the couch, literally trying to survive.
Mhm,
And he's hearing from doctors, migraines, nothing wrong, but he chose to believe me, and he chose to love me through this. And my children were so supportive and so sweet, it almost brings tears to my eyes how wonderful my family was
mhm,
in, light of the lack of any kind of validation.
mhm,
So for that first 2 years, it was just trying to heal the physical. In 2019, I ended up having another episode, and it landed me back in the hospital. But thankfully, we were here in Oklahoma City. By the time I got into the hospital, they admitted me to the neuro step down unit, and my blood pressure was hovering at 40/20. I mean,
mhm,
I was gravely ill once again. And I don't think that they ever figured out exactly if it maybe one of those pseudoaneurysms kind of ripped again or
mhm,
something like that happened. But that's when we started kind of planning my funeral. I said, John, we've really got to look at this, and let's talk
mhm,
about the hard stuff, because I don't know if I can push through anymore. I was
mhm,
so weakened by the first one, and that second one really slammed me. And so I was telling him, Mom has a burial plot here. These are the
mhm,
songs I want played at my funeral.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
And so we were just trying to plan things out, and amidst that, he said, "Well, what do you wanna do while you're here? Let's make some good, happy memories with the kids." And I said, "Okay, I wanna go to Roswell."
That's right up there, but
Uh-huh. So
right.
so one thing to understand about me, me and my husband, we're such a mismatched couple because he is like I sing I can see your halo, Beyonce to him because these wonderful salt of the earth people. Me, I was not. I was a party girl, and I mean, if there was a drink to be had, I was having one.
Right.
When we met, I was kind of the wild child, and I had always been interested in UFO stuff. I mean, from young age, I would not watch Sesame Street. That
Mm.
those kind of things freaked me out. Those shows from the 70s
Darn
and 80s.
puppets and clowns and right.
No, you remember, like, that stuff was freaky. I
It
don't know
could
why we
be.
showed that to our kids.
Oh my god, that's funny.
So instead of that stuff freaked me out. All of the kids shows, I Wizard of Oz, and I I don't want any part of any of that. So instead, I was watching sightings and unsolved
Project
mysteries.
UFO. Do you remember that one? It was one of the first ones.
What was it?
Project UFO.
No.
It's there. It's an oldie. That's what like I'm gonna probably age myself, but I remember, yeah, watching that and just watching the night skies and of course they tell you now if you were seeing all that or had an interest in it at a young age, chances are you're an experiencer. For me, it turned out that I was. Maybe it was the same for you.
It could be. I don't have any recollections of ever having an abduction. I've seen a couple of lights in the sky that were questionable,
Mhm.
and being a nurse, I'm very scientific. So of course I'm
Right.
going on, I'm checking meteor reports, I'm checking satellite,
Right. Yeah.
placements, I'm
Yeah.
looking at, my sky map, I'm looking at everything,
Mhm.
ruling out airplanes, anything that I can. And that's what led into my, becoming a UFO investigator. But from that young age, I had always had that deep, deep interest in UFOs specifically, even though
Right.
I was an experiencer of like ghosts and spirits. Those were always around me. But that was almost like normal. The mystery was the UFO stuff. So I wanted to see all of that. And I read
Right.
and I read and I read. Um, so I was always deeply, deeply interested in the UFO phenomena. So leading up to that, you might look at like a pastor's wife, especially Southern Baptist minister. You would think, that it would be all straight, wouldn't mess with that kind of stuff. But I had always, I had always had that interest, and he knew that going in. That's why we met,
Mhm.
because I was having spiritual encounters and said, "Hey, I'd like to get your take on this." And we met up for coffee, and we never left each other. I mean, within 2 weeks, we had moved in, we're engaged and getting married, and
Right.
he was my person. And so it's been a really interesting dynamic, kind of figuring out from his deeply religious background and my, I mean, I was raised in a Pentecostal church. I used
Right.
to have
Right.
like the long skirt and the hair in the bun, and us as little kids, that's where we went to church and how we dressed and everything. So I had the foundation there, but kind of went my own way, in my late teens, early 20s, and then came back around to it. Um, so going into Roswell, John planned it all out as soon as I got out of the hospital. Waited, I think it was in July is whenever they have the big Roswell festival. So we
Mhm.
loaded up, took the kids, went down there, had an amazing time. And
Mm.
I still had the burning in my head once again, and still was nearly past it. I didn't feel good, but I was
Mhm.
like trying to push through because I loved it. I loved being
Right. Yeah,
and
I'm amongst my people here. Right.
yes, it's
Yeah.
exactly how I felt, and I had
Mhm.
never been to a UFO conference,
Mhm.
never in my years, and so I was amazed that I'm sitting here listening to these people that are just like rock stars up there doing presentations, and then they have booths and you can go over and actually talk to them. And I'm like, oh my God, John, I can go over and just talk. Go over with me. I'm
Now you're
nervous.
going to be coy? Wow.
And so one of the people that was there, I mean, like we heard Travis Walton. I had grown up with Fire in the Sky, and
Yes.
I have a signed deal from him up here, you know, and
Yes.
it's just so cool to me. One of the people that was there was Kathleen Martin.
Yes,
And
of course. Yes.
yes, she's niece of Betty and Barney Hill,
Mhm.
huge abduction case back in the 60s. And
Mhm.
so again, another rock star of the UFO community. And I walk up to her and I kind of remember like I was talking weird. I don't like but my thoughts were still very disjointed and I was nervous and I don't
Aw.
even remember what I said to her, but she was so sweet to me. And she had said she had started the Experiencer resource team for MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is amazing. So I bought a couple of her books, and the next day we headed home. And as we're in the car, I'm telling John, I'm like, we need to look up MUFON. I forgot about MUFON. Let's see if they're having any meetings there in Oklahoma City that we can go to. That'd be fun. I would love that because at the time I wasn't working. I was staying home. I had gone through about a year of counseling to try to get past the PTSD of all the medical stuff.
Mhm.
Still hadn't talked about the N.D.E. I vividly remembered it, but was not ready to even begin to speak about it. I figured if I died, if another episode happened and I died, John wouldn't have to know that I didn't go to heaven. The kids wouldn't have to live with that, you know?
Mhm.
So I kind of kept it to myself.
Hmm.
So we looked up MUFON on the way home and found out that they had a chapter here, connected with them, ended up signing up and become a field investigator. And I was just thrilled because part of my counseling was giving back. And so I had reached out to a organization here in Oklahoma City that deals with terminal kids. And I thought, well, that would be great. I understand about crossing over and whatnot.
Mhm.
And they wanted me to like stand up with these kids and like, isn't this great? We're giving them the stuff, you know? And I was like,
Aw,
I don't want to do that. You know, can I
no.
do something in the office or, you know, behind the scenes? And they were like, no, we don't really do that. So finding MUFON and finding out that I could actually investigate UFOs, I was ecstatic. Oh, all right. This is the giving back. This is
Right.
the volunteerism that is meant for me.
Right.
So I signed right up and I took off with it. I loved it. That whole first year, I buckled down and met up with experiencers. And I talk about some of the really cool encounters that I had meeting up with some abductees here. Um, and then within a year, I was state director. And I thought, wow, I get to be state director. Now I get the inside information.
Right. Now we're gonna learn some stuff. Right.
Yes, I was
Yes.
on top of the world. Well, within a year after that, I became the international director of training for MUFON and put together MUFON University. And we have a whole video series now that walks people through how to investigate UFOs. And oh, it has been a dream come true working with MUFON. I can't speak highly enough. I know people, they've had their stuff in the past. I
Who
will
doesn't?
admit that.
Right.
Yes, and I hate the
Yeah.
Wikipedia page. I tried to edit it and someone keeps changing it back because
Dang
we
them.
are
Yeah.
it, yes, and
Yeah.
it's
Stereotypes are hard. You end up, you know,
it is because we
it's
are
hard
not the
to
same.
undo.
It
Yeah.
is, and we are not the organization that we were
Mhm.
5 years ago.
Mhm.
The people that were causing problems are gone.
Mhm.
I have not had contact with a lot of the people that are brought up in conjunction with MUFON, and I've been part of MUFON for 5 years now, and it
Mhm.
has been nothing but us working to modernize everything, get everything digitized, and
Mhm.
bring it up to current standards. So,
Mhm.
um, it's kind of disheartening, but hopefully we can
People have
become
to
the
look past
organization.
it. People have to
Do
look
what?
past it. People have to
Well,
look past it.
really,
I mean, it's
we
just
have
like,
to prove ourselves.
well, absolutely. But I mean, there's also this thing called evolution, and people evolve, your thoughts change, everything changes. You are literally building from the ground up again, trying to undo this stigma that has come to you because of your predecessors, and that's not fair.
It
But you
is.
see it happen with actors. I mean, I went through it just being 20 years in film, and everybody wants the most dramatic thing out there, and you can give five logical answers to every question, but they always go with the one stupid dramatic one. It does take time to undo all of that.
It does.
So you had your work cut out for you.
Well, and I mean, I'm here for it because I
Yeah.
believe in the mission. I see the good work that happens within MUFON,
Mhm.
and I know the good people that are involved behind the scenes in trying to
Mhm.
really evolve and bring things forward for experiencers and for
Mhm.
support. It really there's nothing like it. And so I truly believe in it. And, some of your listeners may not. And I understand that.
Mhm.
It's going to take some work to
Our
move
listeners
past
are pretty
kind of
good. We have a lot of MUFON hosts, and we've got, I mean, Preston Dennett is the host here. He's with MUFON, and
oh, okay. Yeah.
everybody loves Preston.
Yeah.
So, so you're all good people giving of your time, to
Right.
help other people, and that's where people cannot. You have to move past all that. You have to.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one of the things that we're doing now with MUFON. I've kind of jumped ahead here, but
That's okay.
that's really kind of what I'm working on right now. And you can kind of see back here. This is part of current things that I'm working on with MUFON. They've launched Project Aquarius, and it has all of these libraries from previous researchers. They're releasing, I believe, August 1st will be the Leonard Stringfield files, his personal
Mm,
diaries with all kinds of cases that have never been released. I mean,
wow.
I've talked with Bob Spearing, who's kind of heading up he's our international director of investigations, and he's kind of heading up the Project Aquarius thing. And people can go in, I think it's $50 for a library card,
Hmm.
but it's not, you don't have to be a MUFON member to access it.
Good.
Um,
There you
oh
go.
yeah, yeah. So you can
There you go, cat.
access,
Right.
you get it's like a $50 card, library card to access it. And
Mhm.
anyone can access the newspaper clippings that are in there. Those are free open source. There's a drawings gallery that is in depth, the connections between these drawings that people have submitted to MUFON over all these years is
Mhm.
just mind blowing. And so we're looking at ways to maybe use AI to help kind of look
Mhm.
at things, but we've got to be very careful with that to not, just give away everything that we have in there.
Mhm.
Um, my part of it is the Hayden Hewes files, and a lot of people probably have never heard of Hayden Hewes. Uh,
Right.
he was an investigator here in Oklahoma City back in 1957. He started the International UFO Bureau, and
Wow.
he kind of laid low.
I
People have
wonder
no.
why. That's
Yes,
right.
he had the original handwritten Jimmy Carter report was filed with the International UFO Bureau straight to Hayden Hewes. This here is a letter from Warner von Braun talking about UFOs to Hayden. This is Jimmy Carter's report. That's Hayden back there. I
Mhm.
mean, there is so much in there. The Tulsa Boy Scout photo from the
Mhm.
1965 flap that happened here within central U.S. and it extended out, but really over the central U.S. in July 31st through August 2nd of 1965. Thousands of UFO sightings, and Hayden actually saw one, and he was there at the police station looking
Yes.
at this UFO going over. My own mother saw one during that 3-day period, and so he has all kinds of files on that 65 flap. One of the things that it ties into is Hartshorn, Oklahoma. And that is the case that I spoke about whenever I did my appearance on Ancient Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a new case that was reported to MUFON. I ended up going out there. I had never heard of Hartshorn, living in Oklahoma my entire life. And it's down in the southeastern region around the Kiamichi Mountains, where all the Bigfoot sightings happen.
Funny that.
Yes.
Right.
And so that whole area, it used to be like outlaws would hide out in that area because it's so thick and dense and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just rolling hills. It's right there at the foothills of the Ozarks. And so Hartshorn is like this little bitty town. It's 2,000 people. And back in the 70s, it had 2,000 people. So I think it's gained one resident because I had looked up the population from 1975 to now. They've gained
Wow.
one resident. But in 75 is whenever the big schoolyard sighting happened, and nobody talked about it. This was like a little uh, was a little family school there that they had started, a little boarding school, and they took in a couple of little sibling groups that came and lived with the family. But they had 6,000 acres of this ranch, and they had cattle out there. It's
Right.
huge, but it's out in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
Uh, so they're out there, they have their little schoolhouse, and the kids are outside and they're playing in the sandbox. This boy that reported this and his brother, and they started noticing this thing floating off in the distance. And over the course of about an hour, it slowly made its way towards them. And as it did, they could tell that it was a large saucer shaped object. And it was flashing multicolored lights around the rim of it. And so one of them ran in. There were multiple kids outside. There were, I think, 17 kids total that were out there. Most of them belonged to the Buchanan family, who owned the house and the schoolyard. And so they ran in to go get the teacher. There was one teacher there that was 18 years old, I believe, at the time. And the mother, Buchanan mother, was there. So they came out. And I actually was able to speak to the teacher, and she's a doctor now and had written out this beautiful account of exactly what she remembers from that time. But she describes her and the Buchanan mother standing there and looking up. This thing was maybe 60 feet above them, just hovering silently, and just those lights going around the perimeter. And all the kids were running. The oldest Buchanan boy got freaked out. So he ran inside, he grabbed his 2020 shotgun and went up on the roof of the schoolhouse and aimed it at the UFO. And when he did, they said that it kind of flipped up on its side and shot away. And then it looked like it settled about a mile away over by the sawmill that was on their property. So they kind of got all the kids rounded up. Everyone was kind of in a tiss, and they got them inside. The oldest boy started boarding up the windows and doors and nailing everything shut. And the kids, the little kids, were looking out the window, and they were like, there are little guys out there. And the teacher said, well, what do they look like? And they said, they just keep changing. So I
That's
don't know if they,
interesting.
yes, if they were kind of shape shifting. It reminded me very much of like the Kentucky Goblins case, where they were, you know, had the shotguns and were nailing everything up. Same kind of thing was happening in Hartshorn in 75. So they ended up all sleeping in the living room in front of the fireplace until the teacher said that she heard the sounds of nature return. And once that happened, then she knew it was over. So that next morning, all of the kids that I talked to remember getting up, and the teacher helped them like set up a sack lunch. You know, they're packing tuna sandwiches and bananas, and then they go on a hike to go find this UFO.
Oh my gosh. Wow. All right. We're okay with it this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they walk up there to see if it's still there or if there's any signs of it being there. And they couldn't find anything, but they all vividly remember going up there to look for it that next day. They made kind of a fun little field trip of it. And so on the way back, she stopped, and they had an outdoor freezer. The teacher looked in there, was going to pull out some beef. They had some processed beef from some of their cattle. and was going to pull something out to make for lunch. And whenever she looked into the freezer, it had been emptied of 2 sides of beef. And so this is the only case I have ever heard where processed beef, not they had live cattle out there. It wasn't like a cattle mutilation. The processed beef was missing. So
They wanted the good stuff, right?
I guess
Barbecue ready. That's insane. That's insane.
ready for them.
Yes.
So
Wow.
the
Wow.
strange thing is, she said the next day went out there and she was going to show the Buchanan father what had happened. And they look into the freezer, it's all returned. And so the Buchanan father said, absolutely not. We are not eating that. And that's a lot of money. But he dragged it all out to the middle of the field and burned it. He said, no, we're not eating it. And the kids,
it. Wow.
yes. So the kids remember eating like oatmeal for several days because they burned all of that beef because he didn't trust it.
Mhm.
And then there was some talk about Men in Black showing up later. Someone had mentioned that they remember the Buchanan mother had taken pictures and that the camera had been confiscated. I was never able to confirm any of that.
Mhm.
But the case is fascinating, and there are still other things that tie into this, that I'm working with a reporter that's really looking into uncovering some of the things that happened there that I can't really get into right now. But
No, of course
eventually,
not. But it's a sign of the times as well, right? I mean, they would have been a little bit more clamped up about it than I think,
absolutely.
than nowadays, especially in Oklahoma,
Well, and it was a
right? It's a
religious school.
people, a
It
lot
was
of people of faith, right?
Yes, well, and it was a
Yeah.
little religious school,
Yeah, okay,
and
there we
so
go,
of
right.
course they're not wanting to talk about it,
No.
and nobody ever talked about it until this guy came forward. He had seen the Nimitz report coming out and some of the things the government was doing. He said, "Okay, I feel comfortable talking about this now," and
Mhm.
he didn't realize just what a big case it would be. So
Our
in
producer was on the Nimitz with an experience. Nimitz had
really,
2 experiences.
wow,
I can connect
okay.
you. I can connect you. I'm pretty sure Margie was on and he came on and went, "Blah,
Oh,
blah." She was
Marty.
like, "Yeah, I know." So, yeah, so very,
Yeah.
that was a big one, the Nimitz. That's
Yes, it
great,
was.
but
And
no
well,
one
it
knew
was
about
kind
the
of
other one.
it was a springboard for a lot of people to come forward. Yeah,
Mhm,
like you said, there's such a stigma, but I think that that's kind of falling by the wayside. Used to
mhm.
be people would be like, "Oh, I don't believe in that stuff." Now it's like, "I saw something once," and they're trying to keep it hush, but they're starting to come forward little by little, and it's
Mhm,
wonderful to see, especially working with something like MUFON, where
mhm,
we have that whole database of encounters dating as far back as you can remember. And now, when people are coming forward, we can line these up with other encounters that are
mhm,
already in the database that can
mhm,
serve to, support what's being reported. So that's ended up what happened with Hartshorn.
mhm.
I was looking more into the area. I was wondering why there were so many reports there. I really dug into it and it ended up becoming Case of the Year for MUFON, I believe, in 2021. And as I did, I kept coming across Hayden Hewes. And so that's how I ended up uncovering all of the International UFO Bureau, all of the files that he had. He was actually working with a lady named Claire Morgan, who was the wife of the postmaster out there in Hartshorn back in the 70s and the 60s and 70s. She had actually seen one of the first UFOs of that whole 1965 flap. Hers
Wow.
was just a couple of days before the spate of them happened across the state. And I mean, people were reporting them over in New Mexico, up in
Mhm,
Kansas, Arkansas, down in Texas. They were all around Missouri, eh, thousands of reports. But Alticlair had amassed over 200, I believe, reports from that small town of 2,000
hmm.
people. And they were holding sky watches and all kinds of stuff back then. So what's going on there in southeast Oklahoma, that
Mhm.
all of these UFO sightings were happening there, and they're still kind of continuing.
Mhm.
A lot of the locals, we went out and talked to them. They remember Alta Clara. They remember all this, the wide sightings that were happening in that area. A lot of them say it's starting around the small lake that's out in that area.
Mm.
So I need to return and look more into some of this stuff, because it's kind of the case that keeps on giving.
Mhm.
We're in 2024 now, so it's been 3 years that still I'm uncovering things that seem to tie back into Hartshorn. So there's something strange about the area.
Well, it's a curiosity as well, because when you think back to the time frame, the world was pretty quiet there for a little while with everything that transpired, over the last few years. And I wonder if there was just more activity coming out because it's just not as busy. Because I found, just going in through, we found the same thing. The time being in Niagara Falls, a hotbed for all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell you, we would take a drive down by along the river, and I didn't even know there were caves in some parts of, like, looking over to the US side. I'm like, is that a freaking cave? And because there's always people there, you can never see the other side. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there was more UFO activity in that time. And I had a friend at the time who worked with MUFON, and I'd be just like firing them off. And yeah, so I wonder if there's just because there's less activity, less people, less vehicles, less, if maybe there was a bit of a comfort level change.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you now, kind of what I've shifted into is with the cattle mutilations that have been
Oh,
happening down
right.
through Texas, up here into southern Oklahoma. We had a cattle mutilation that was reported last year, and it was one of the cases of the year this year. But
Wow.
it's still ongoing. Um, and one of the things we're trying to do within MUFON is shift towards the evidence collection and really focus on getting people out there, boots on the ground. No one really can do it like MUFON has. We're looking at resurrecting our STAR team that was actually uh, put together under Bigelow when we were working with Bigelow
Yes.
several years back.
Mhm.
And so we've kind of reconfigured some of the field investigator levels, and we've put all the protocols in place for the STAR team so that we can deploy people within 24 hours to major sightings. If
Mm.
there's a flap, if there's a landing, if there's a major abduction, something like that.
Mm.
But and so we're really kind of refocusing towards get out there, boots on the ground, meet up with people. There
Mm.
is nothing that can compare to actually being in the environment, talking face to face with the experiencers. And there's a level of comfort in actually having someone believe you enough to come out and meet up. Let's go have a cup of coffee and discuss what you're going through and how you feel.
Mhm.
Um, and so
Mhm.
back to the cattle mutilation, went down there. I mean, this rancher, she had reported finding her cow. It was a Holstein, a young Holstein, and she only had like 6 cows. They were more like pets. And when we went out there, we got there within 2-3 hours after she had reported it. I mean, because it was about a 2-hour drive to get down there. And we got there probably 5-6 o'clock in the afternoon. So we had just enough daylight to, gather up, took samples
Mhm.
of everything. It had the classic cookie cutter, circular cut around the jaw area. The
Hmm.
eye had been removed, the tongue had been removed, the anus had been cored out. It still had its sex organs, like the udders
Mhm.
were still
Mhm.
there. But we were able to take samples of where the cut was around the cheek, the buccal area, and sent that off to the MUFON lab. And our lab analyst was able to actually find that there was a black line that it was visible whenever we
Mhm.
saw it. She was able to show that it was actually cut with a laser, but she said it wasn't like a medical laser. It was either a ultraviolet or infrared laser that had
Hmm.
been used. to cut that area because she said the intensity was either that it was held in that place too long or it was too high of an intensity for
Mhm.
that type of cut.
Mhm.
So it left that black border on it. Well, the rancher ended up not being able to bury the cow that night because rain had moved in that next day and everything. And so she said, I'm just going to watch it. I kind of want to see what happens, you
Watch
know.
the cow. Wow.
She she was amazing. She was one of the best witnesses that I have worked with, and
Mhm.
I've worked with some really, really cool people. But she was more interested to see what was going to happen. She's like, I want to see if the animals go around it, or if
Mhm.
any kind of bugs go to it, and how it kind of degrades. So she just left it and kind of kept an eye on it. Well, within a couple of days later, the udders had been removed. And again, it was in that circular fashion where it
Mhm.
looked, like it had been cut with a laser.
Mhm.
And she said, well, let's put a trail cam on here and get some good, video photos of what's going on. That night, there was like a dense fog that settled in just right over the animal.
Mm.
And I don't know if that can, be from outgassing or anything like that. But it was strange that it was there, and it was several days after it had passed. So as we were waiting for lab results and everything, because that took several months to get those results, she contacts me about a week later and she said, you're not going to believe this. My mini zebu is dead. I just saw it 20 minutes ago and it was just fine. And the thing already has rigor. And it was just a few yards outside of her window. And so she sent me pictures of it. And I said, my goodness, okay, this is interesting.
Mm.
The mini zebu, and it's kind of a strange little creature. It has the horns that come around and everything.
Mhm.
Has kind of
Mhm.
the water buffalo look with the hump and
Right.
whatnot.
Right.
And you could tell in the picture, I mean, the legs were straight out stiff. And she said, I don't know. There's no mutilation. They didn't take anything. I don't know if you want to come out here or not. And I said, okay.
I wonder if something frightened it.
Well, I don't know. For it to be that stiff already,
You
strange.
ever heard the term scared stiff? I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's very unusual that it would be untouched. Like, what would cause it? Wow.
And so she's actually a nurse as well. So thankfully, she had all kinds of sterile equipment there. And she said,
Mhm.
I'll take some samples for you. So she took a buccal sample from inside the mouth. She took one in the nostril. And she actually did a kind of a little mini necropsy before she buried it, where she cut it open to see if there was anything missing from the internal organs. And everything seemed to be intact, but it was again kind of
Mhm.
bloodless. There wasn't much blood spill for when
Wow.
she cut it open, which was one of the findings on that original cow. I mean, there was a couple of drops of blood from the nose, but nothing like you
Mhm.
would expect from that level of damage.
Mhm.
But this one, like I said, it did. The zebu didn't have anything cut into it.
Mm.
And one of the things when she went to move it, she got the excavator under it and picked it up, and she noticed that the horns just kind of fell and dangled. So she grabbed a hold of it, and she actually sent me a video where she was, rolling around in circles, and they had broken at the base of the skull, both at the same level, but were
Oh.
still within that flesh socket.
Mhm.
And I had asked her to please grab me one of the horns so we could analyze up close the break pattern, but she forgot to, and her husband buried it before she could get it out. But
Oh.
we at least have pictures that can show how it was
Mhm.
broken. We can kind of see from the pictures how
Mhm.
it looks, as far as the breaks.
Mhm.
And whenever our lab analyst looked at it, she said that it looked like it would have had to been dropped from a height of 300 feet for them to break in that pattern
Mhm.
without any other visible damage. I mean, it left a crater where it was dropped.
So
Uh,
I have to ask, has there been any testing for radiation or anything around this? Like, do we
Yeah, that was one of the first things when we showed up. First thing that I always test for if there's been a landing,
Right.
anything
Yes.
close, especially, a
Mm-hmm.
mutilation, crop circle, anything like that. First thing is always radiation. And
Mm-hmm.
there was no radiation. We had slight RF being put off right
Mm-hmm.
above the Holstein when we went there. But I since found that it can actually be caused by a decaying body, can actually throw off RF, which I thought was weird. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't anything outrageous.
So, I mean, would you think that a craft coming from something interdimensional or anywhere would exhibit signs of radiation? I'm only asking because there is a theory within the field that some believe that it's military, or it's one of ours coming out here and doing this stuff as well.
That's the $1,000,000 question. All
Yeah.
we can do is collect the
Yes.
evidence, continue to compile and
Mhm.
quantify what we find.
Mhm.
I know that people have reported black helicopters after cattle mutilations,
Gosh,
but
yeah, see?
there wasn't
Why?
anything
It's like,
there wasn't anything reported with that, like
Right.
that on this one. And this was
Mhm.
down in Temple, Oklahoma, where a major UFO sighting happened back in 65.
Right.
And it was actually investigated by Blue Book.
Mhm.
Um, so,
Mhm. Hmm.
again, maybe Temple has something to do with it. The rancher said that there was about 6 other cows that were mutilated right there in that area, but no one ever would speak up or report it. So we weren't able to go out and collect anything. And it was at the same time that all of those were happening down in Texas. I think there were 8 that were mutilated down there, and it led right up to the Temple area.
Mhm.
Uh, but from what I was told, the FBI stepped in and kind of shut down any
Mhm.
talk of the mutilations down in Texas.
Mhm.
But we kind of had creeped in and got our samples, and they've already sent off. And so they never contacted us up in Oklahoma. They just kind of let the ranchers go and
Right.
just didn't talk about it.
Yeah, don't acknowledgement is empowerment. We're just gonna say nothing and, watch it
Yeah,
just disappear, basically.
pretty
Wow.
much. Yeah.
Wow, that's insane. Okay, I'm gonna take this little pause as a good time to do a station and sponsor ID. So, for those who are just tuning in, you are listening to the Outer Realm Radio. We're broadcasting live on United Public Radio, UFO Paranormal Radio, 105.3 from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 from New Orleans, and Roku TV. So, thank you for joining us. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. I am paying attention to, I'm just tagging a few little things here, so I'm not ignoring anybody. Tonight, our special guest is Mindy Tautfest, who is just wonderful. She is talking, of course, about her book, Dying to Meet Them, One Woman's Incredible Journey from N.D.E to U.A.P. And of course, we're getting a lot of other interesting bonus information. Cow mutilations. I think people are fascinated with that. So, anyway, we will continue on, but not before we say a big, huge thank you to Folgers Coffee, our sponsor. Thank you for being with us for the last 5 years. We appreciate you so, so very much. So, I just had to put this up. I have a real background noise. I don't know. Maybe there's feedback coming from somebody. It's not, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not, I don't think I had any sort of background noise. How strange. Anyway, okay. Project UFO, for those asking, 1978 to 1979, 2 agents of the U.S. government, Project Blue Book, Project investigate sightings of extraterrestrial and unidentified flight objects. Creator Harold Jack Bloom had William Jordan in it as a star, Edward Winter, and Casey Swaim. I've never heard of it. Anyway, it existed. This is the point I'm trying to make. So, anyway, we are back, and I don't know. I'm going to try to get this sorted out. If it is coming from my end, I have absolutely no idea from where. But it seems to quiet down when I quiet down.
I'm
The universe is
not
trying to
hearing
tell me.
anything.
You don't hear it? No?
Uh-uh.
Okay, maybe it's just, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, Richard. I don't know where we're getting it from, but anyway, try to bear with us. So we are back. So, um, it sounds like it's been a heck of a journey, and it's helped in your, I guess, spiritual growth. It's helped with your, I guess, your evolution in knowledge, because you have. I know what I'll use for an example. I've been in media for probably about 2 years, retired from it, and consult on films and things like that. And I love radio. We started out in a radio station. Everything happened a few years ago, shutting down, and we just basically decided to keep doing it this way. And every time, we bring someone on, I just always learn something. It's just so enriching to me. I love learning new things and other people's perspectives. And this is one of those moments, just so you know. So I'm thoroughly enjoying this. Oh, pleasure.
It's so wonderful whenever experiencers connect and
Yeah.
really can come together, because it's like, oh, me too. you know
Yeah.
and that's actually one of the things I go into in the book. We kind of had spoken about a little bit on our emails, was the similarities between near-death experiencers and UFO experiencers. And that was one of the very first things that I had kind of come across whenever I started working with the experiencer resource team and talking to abductees.
Mhm.
Was, my goodness, these people sound like me. Why are they sounding like me? I'm a near-death experiencer. They're abductees.
Mhm.
And I thought, with each one that I would talk to, it just kept solidifying that thought process, especially in the after effects, the
Mhm.
way people were changed afterwards. I had one lady that said that she could talk to plants and animals afterwards. She had, felt a vibration with them, and, saw new colors and stuff. She was affecting electrical things. And, I was one that oh man, I fried a couple of microwaves, and I would try to sign on. I would try to join like IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I would get on and I would try to join their sharing groups. And my computer would just go completely bonkers. I mean, we would shut off everything that was connected to Wi-Fi or anything. And it's still, anytime I got upset, I would lose connection. And I mean, we had all kinds of interference. Maybe that's why you're
I
hearing
was
stuff.
gonna say, I
I,
cannot find any reason for this, Mindy. Just saying.
It would not surprise me. It's been what, 8 years or so since I've had my N.D.E, but I mean, every once in a while, street lights will go out and stuff. But I mean, it was really potent with those first couple of years. That I mean, I was affecting everything, and I was like, is it me? Am I the drama?
Yeah,
What's going on here? And it
right.
was. But anyway, speaking with UFO experiencers and abductees, they were reporting a lot of these weird things too. And it's like, okay, I'm brand new to this. I don't want to make assumptions or, think that there's a connection where there is none, that I'm just kind of inventing this on my own. If this is a thing, other people have, someone smarter than me has seen this. And so I started looking up connections between N.D.Es and UFO experiencers. And what I found blew me away. First thing I found was Dr. Kenneth Rain. And since writing my book, he's become a dear friend. We're pen pals, and he always, I love him. He is in his 90s, and he's always saying, "My dearest Mindy," and then I love Ken, and he's so gentle. I love the man, and I'm so thankful that I got a chance to get to know him. But I, at first was almost fangirling, because here's this. He was a professor of psychology back at the University of Connecticut, and in '92 is whenever he started the Omega Project. He had already been looking into near-death experiences. He had done all kinds of studies on them. He had started IANS, with Raymond Moody and
Big names.
Dr. Bruce Grayson. Yeah, all
Yes.
legends.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look back at like interviews from back then, 80s, 90s, Ken was really the champion for let's listen to these people that have had dark encounters. Let's not rule it out, because there was more of a bent towards only love and light, radiant encounters, people that had these wonderful things and they came away with, filled with love and light. And there's some of us that don't. And it's almost more devastating for those of us that don't have a radiant encounter, because we're dealing with the rejection of the other side. We're dealing with the rejection of people that once were our biggest supporters. Well, what did you do to deserve it? There must be something deep in your spirit,
Right.
And Ken was able to look past it. And so whenever he read through my book, he was so supportive and just wonderful at helping me kind of walk through and process it. But and that's just another one of his wonderful attributes. But he had looked at, it was back in 92, one of his colleagues gave him a book, which was Communion by Whitley Strieber, and said, Ken, you need to read this, because this guy, he sounds like your near-death experiencers. And Ken was like, I don't do UFOs. I don't do UFOs, but I'll humor you. And so he read through it and he said, my goodness, you're right. He was profoundly changed, very much like my near-death experiencers. So he set up this whole study between near-death experiencers and UFO experiencers called the Omega Project, and asked them different questions to find the commonalities and differences. And what he found was two main commonalities, and I kind of highlight on my own personal journey and experience with those two commonalities in my book. But number one was the encounter-prone personality. And you being an experiencer, me being an experiencer, and anyone listening being an experiencer would know that from childhood, we have had these kinds of different encounters. Mine was more shadow people, spirit encounters, disembodied voices, and
I've had that too.
Yeah. And I don't have any recollection of ever having an abduction event or anything. I've had strange dreams of flying out my window. Could be something, I don't know. I haven't ever looked into regression or anything. But I don't have any traumatic memories or anything of any kind of abduction. But mine was always spirit encounters for the most part as a child. But what they found with the encounter-prone personality is that a lot of us, unfortunately, have had some kind of abuse in our background. And that's not true for everybody. Not everyone has been abused. Some people were born naturally with these abilities, and some were able to kind of grow it through a mentor, like a parent saying, kind of fostering it in them. But they were able to actually kind of dissociate and exclude all of the environment around them, where they were able to send their mind almost to be in contact with other realms. And he was able to like weed out that most of us experiencers are not fantasy prone. So we're not, the kids out making up elaborate things,
Right.
I struggle when my children were young. I never told them bedtime stories because literally I couldn't come up with, I was awful at it. I sang songs, my husband told the stories. And so we aren't like super imaginative people and we're not fantasy prone. We're not, fighting dragons. We're literally connecting with something else. So that was number one that he found, was the encounter prone personality, where we were able to connect with something other. And number two was the set of after effects, where, like I had mentioned before, electrical interferences, but we change. We almost see a difference between our life before and our life after is almost two separate things. And I know with my near-death experience, that was a definite dividing line of who Mindy was before and who I am now. We're able to see the bigger picture of everything, much more giving, loving, accepting. which is only, served to serve me better, with
Well, I
those
mean, it
changes.
changes you, would have to change you in one form or
Yeah.
another. Did you come back almost thinking like, "Oh, man, I better do some major changes because I don't wanna end up back in the spot, in the
Well, you
void."
would think, it wasn't really fear-based. It was
Yeah.
more like a return to who I really knew I am and at my core,
Mhm,
and accepting that and accepting people for who they are, where they're
mhm,
at in their lives. You know,
mm,
I don't look at people and kind of like, well, I probably don't want to be around that person because of their beliefs or
mhm,
that's not part of my makeup.
mhm,
Any of that may have been learned has been unlearned, and it was almost just kind of removed. That's why I said now I'm more apolitical.
right,
I can't get into politics, use some
right,
common sense, be a good human. Unfortunately, that's not the way of the world, but that's
mhm.
kind of where I'm at now. Same thing with
It's
religion.
it's evolution. I think you can push aside the conditioning, and not everyone can evolve at the same time, right? Our paths are all different, and
Well,
sometimes some people get left behind.
that's true. That's if you've read the Omega Project, I would highly recommend it. I mean, I know it's an old book, but man, the insights in it uh,
Mhm,
give you a whole new set of understanding of kind of these different phenomena.
mm,
But one of the things that Ken kind of comes to the conclusion of is that there's an Omega prototype that's kind of being built out of these different encounters to evolve us onto the next kind of level.
mm.
Uh, I don't know. I don't like to think of myself as highly evolved. I mean, if I'm highly
Oh, even
evolved,
if it's just a little bit.
you
I
know,
like to think we evolve every day on some level.
hopefully we
I
do.
don't I don't really relate to the hamster on the wheel. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, and I
so,
think a lot of people are breaking out of it, and these
yeah.
new generations. Oh my goodness. My kids are what, Gen Z, I guess. Yes. And Gen Alpha, people say they're just feral. Like
I know. I know.
but the amount of progress I can see, I'm Gen X. I'm kind of in between Gen X, millennial. I'm Xennial. I'm within that little, like 5-year period, but I'm aging myself. But um, just seeing the evolution with the new generations,
Mhm,
and they are fiercely defensive of each other, protective.
mhm.
I mean, to a fault. They could be defending something completely against all,
If
common
they
sense.
believe in it, that's it.
That's it,
Yes.
and they support each other in ways that, it's inspiring. And I hope that we continue to see this acceptance and love and support and we can
Mhm,
get past, some of these. I know, like here these last few weeks, there's been a spate of, call-ins for school shootings and threats and stuff,
mm,
and that gets into more political stuff. And I don't
mhm,
necessarily want to go into that. We've been dealing with it here with me having kids in high school.
mm,
It is disappointing, but I think that's getting that kind of thinking is getting pushed out. And hopefully
mm,
both the majority of these kids in these generations will be able to stand up against this kind of stuff and say, no, we're not doing that.
mhm.
We're not, it's
They
not
will
acceptable.
evolve past, previous generations much faster, I think, between
Yeah.
technologies and awakenings and having more open minds, probably because of the technology. I mean, let's face it, everybody's got one of these for the most part,
Yeah.
So, and
Can
I
you
think
imagine if we would have had these when we were kids?
I'd have been dangerous, Mindy. I'd have
Yeah.
been dangerous with one of those.
With the technology, you bring up something, and I had touched on Hayden Hewes before. We're actually putting together and working with Chris Jordan from Curious Realm
Oh,
and
he's wonderful. He's been
Research.
on. I love him.
Okay, he
Yes.
came over. He spent like 3 days, a whole weekend here at my house, cramped up in this little bitty office. with his scanners and everything and digitize. He's the one that digitized all of the Hayden files.
Wow.
And he said, oh my gosh, we need to build a website. So he's got like a URL, haydenhewes.com, HAYDENHEWES.com. And I mean, it just kind of has the logo up there right now because I mean, this is brand spanking new. But and he's doing all of this because of just what he saw in the collection and said, we've got to get on this and like make this public.
Wow.
So
That's wonderful.
he's working on possibly building a Hayden Hewes bot, which people will be able to go on. This is kind of the way of the future with some of these researchers who have passed away. We can feed in all of their writings, all of their thoughts on things, and then actually talk to them. We can create a bot. Hey, what do you think about UFOs, you know, with red lights that are triangular? And you'd be able to get exactly what that researcher thought. So we're looking at getting something like that going. And hopefully, I think Chris has a couple others that he's working with that will start being able to build on this stuff. It's exciting, just the capabilities that we have now. All of this research has been sitting in boxes, lost to time. And we've been kind of, like you had said, the hamster wheel. We're kind of reinventing everything that they knew back in the 70s. Now we can put it all into, you know, a digital format where we can scan over it and we can confirm things we're finding now with some of the stuff they had back then that people aren't even aware of. One of the things in my collection is an original copy of Project Grudge. It's loose leaf, metal bound. There are addendums taped in on multiple pages that have never been released. So we have stuff from the government, straight from Wright Pat. I mean, Hayden worked with Wright Pat. He was out there several times. So someone shuffled him a copy of Project Grudge, and that's one of the things we're going to be able to release is these secretive addendums that have never been out there.
It's starting to feel like the FBI vaults, black vaults, and just all the good stuff. Do you feel that in coming and being forthcoming with the sharing of this information that it's going to, again, maybe people will look at you guys in that different light and go, no, this is the new organization, the way of the future, not the, you know, where you're hoarding everything and right. So.
We are. As far as MUFON is involved, I know the people I work with at the top level are wonderful people that really want to advance the knowledge and get this stuff out there. You know, whatever MUFON has done in the past, I know there's dirty deeds. But, you know, that's not who I am. That's not who the people I'm working with are. And hopefully we can, you know, build some trust and confidence in us as we move forward.
I think there's also the stigma that, you know, people would think that a lot of people would just, you know, talking to people through doing this for a million years, that you were more interested or focused more, I guess is a better way to put it, on actual UFO sightings and events and things like that, not so much on the experiencers.
Right. Well, and that's very true. There's kind of a divide. You know, there's some that are more nuts and bolts only. There's some that are more on the, you know, paranormal type side. Paranormal is a big no-no in MUFON. When I speak about like my connection, near-death experiences with UFOs, that's not a MUFON thing. That's a Mindy Tautfest thing. Just to be very clear on that. But I mean, MUFON's made up of so many different types of people. One of the things is the experiencer resource team that Kathleen Martin put together. And that's kind of the side where they can, you know, we can help people process what they've been through. They can connect with other experiencers and kind of talk through some of the stranger things that happen. On the front end of a report, if you're an abductee and you've had an abduction encounter, first thing we're going to want to do is have a field investigator come out, you know, and take the radiation readings. Let's, you know, run a tri-field around you. Let's test the environment. Do you have any markings? You know, are they on a place where you could send us a picture of these? You know, can we swap it? Can we run any kind of analysis on it? Let's get the physical evidence to back up what you're saying, because this isn't, just a mental phenomena. This isn't just a physical phenomena. I believe that it's both. And I speak about that in my book. There are both sides of it. And only by acknowledging both sides are we going to understand fully what's going on and get the most information about, who's responsible for these abductions and, what they're after, what are they doing, what's their purpose. There's a lot of questions that we need to answer, and the only thing that will back that up is hard physical evidence. So the first thing we want to do is get a field investigator, an advanced investigator out there to get some kind of evidence if we can. Let's get your full account down before you forget anything.
Yeah, but what do you do if it goes back? If it's an experience that's happened, like for me, it's generational. I've grew up with stories like this from grandparents, great grandparents, mom, dad, who knew, becoming an adult, they're like, oh no, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, you're an adult. Oh, yeah, we had this go on and we saw this. Like, what the hell? You made me think it was a crazy kid. So all this stuff comes out. But one thing I have learned, and which just sparks it in me, is when you say, well, paranormal is a no-no. But when I think about how many people have said there seems to be just a connection in activity, heightened senses, smells, things of that nature. I thought I had these crazy paranormal experiences, and I realized, wait, that could have been an alien experience. Like they near each other so much that I actually have started second guessing which was actually which, right down to psychokinesis and projection of energy. My daughter went through it. Then I find out, okay, wait, experiencers.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you do with that if you're like, no, we were trying to isolate this part of it?
Well, that's where the ERT comes in. So after collecting any kind of evidence, let's get that sent off to the lab. And in the meantime, let's connect you with an ERT experiencer specialist that can help kind of walk through some of those more strange things that can go along with it. And they'll kind of, break down some of the things like you're speaking of that aren't necessarily part of a nuts and bolts investigation, but kind of deal with some of the more non-physical side of things and the experiential side. So that's it, really working together. And any of our ERT specialists are field investigators as well. So if there's a state where someone's an ERT specialist and an advanced investigator, they can handle both sides of it. If not, we might have two people working the same case together. That way, both sides are getting acknowledged and both sides are being addressed within that same experiencer. So we're trying to expand where we're looking at both sides of things.
No, it's just great. Yeah, I like that, because it just seems that everything comes around full circle in one form or another. So it's just like I leave out half of the equation, half the population, when everything realistically is so connected. Now you have an incredible event coming up.
Yes, I do.
You want to share?
Both of ours, yes. I'll be speaking at XCon for the UNX Network with Margie Kay and Debbie Ziegelmeyer. She'll be speaking there, and there's a whole fantastic lineup. And I believe that there's going to be like a Bigfoot, hunt and sky watch, and don't quote me on it. I know Margie goes into all of these things.
She does.
Yes, I'll be speaking on my near-death encounter and some of the research from Kenneth Ring and some of the things we kind of covered today. But I'm really looking forward to it. There's supposed to be a Mad Hatter event, and so I've got my little white rabbit costume ready for that.
It's the season. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, I've had the pleasure of sitting across Margie, 3 times, and wealth of information, and she's just a lot of fun. Very, very.
She's an incredible human. I'll tell you, when I first joined MUFON, she was the first person to reach out to me and said, honey, if you need anything, I'm right over here in Missouri, and you just let me know. And she's just a wonderful human being. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad to be working with her and get to go out there and spend some time. So if
Yes.
anyone's in the Missouri area, come out and see us. It's in October, what is it, 10th? I believe it's here in about a week or so. We could have.
Yeah. So in a couple of weekends,
Yeah.
essentially. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it is a time of year where, all the good stuff happens. Realistically, people are so focused on Halloween. Again, it's coming back to you're leaving out half of the equation. So I agree with you. I have never been to any sort of a UFO conference or
Really?
convention. I have turned down doing them, and I've turned down doing paranormal convention, things like that, because I have a tight schedule. But I'm also one that feels that, you know what? I may know things, but there are people who focus on certain areas that know a heck of a lot more than I do. And those are the people that should be brought into it. But it's very humbling to
No.
be considered,
You probably have like this incredible knowledge of all kinds of things with all the people you've spoken to.
Mm.
I can understand why you'd be highly sought after. So
Thank
um,
you. Thank you.
hopefully you'll come out and just come hang out sometime. It's fun just to be there and to be surrounded with like-minded people and just have that connection. The vibe is so awesome, to get a whole bunch of us together. So
Well, and
I'd love to see you out sometime.
like-minded is the key right there when you
Yeah.
say that, because, it's not like you can just go and talk to just anybody about some of this stuff. Some people are very private about stuff like that because of the conditioning, I
Yeah.
find, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
you're amongst people who think the same way, and they're there for the same reason you are, and you walk away with another whole wealth of information.
You do. You
So,
do.
once again, I'm going to put your book up, and I did put the Amazon link in the description to purchase it. So, where can they find your book other than Amazon? Or
They can find it on my website is mindytautfest.com. It's MindyTautfest.com. And I actually have a playlist on there of some of my songs that kind of go along with the book, like a little soundtrack if people like that kind of thing. Man, those songs spoke to me at the time. So I highly encourage, if you're going to buy the book, go listen to the playlist. But you can purchase the book through there, any bookstore. Yeah. And of course, I'll have some copies there at XCon here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, that'd be the perfect place to get it.
Yeah.
I've read the book. I love the book. I can completely resonate with, I could feel so much of your emotion going through it and your experience, and it's the mom in me that came out and sympathized with you the most. So thank you for writing it, and I'm sure anybody who reads it, who have even remotely gone through something like that or hasn't, there's no way you can't feel what you went through.
Well, thank you.
It's beautiful. It was. So
I tried to write everything down before reading anything about near-death experiences, or I didn't want anything else kind of influencing my thought. I just wanted to get it all down. So I appreciate you saying that, because that was just raw emotion at that time.
you can tell. You can
Yeah.
tell, and it must have been difficult at times to relive it and put it on paper.
It
pen to
was.
paper, as I say. Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
write about 500 words and then I would just be exhausted. So my next book will be much more lighthearted and
Right. Right. I
but
know.
I'm
It's
so
gonna be
glad that Margie encouraged me to write it and get it out there, because it's been wonderful just talking to the other experiencers that truly understand some of the emotions you go through when you're trying to process some of this stuff. So thank you so much, Michelle.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I know Amelia, who's been under the weather, is probably going, "God," because she's had 4 NDEs, and she's got the whole electrical thing. just 2 weeks ago, she messages me. She goes, "I think she did it in a toaster oven and some kind of a cappuccino machine or something, or I'm just espresso machine." I'm like, "Together?" She goes, "Yes." It's like,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
it's a part of an everyday thing for her. So I know she would have, you guys would have had a giggle
Uh-huh.
with that. So, but thank you and all the best at your event. And I hope when you write your next book, you'll consider coming back, or anytime you have something you would like to share, you will consider coming back and sharing it with us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Have a good evening, and
You
thank
too.
you. All right, thank you. Well, everyone, we have come to the end of another awesome segment here on the show. Big thank you to all of you in chat. I'm sorry about the feedback. I have absolutely no idea where it's coming from. I can't hear myself, obviously, so I don't know. I know. I don't know. But anyway, thank you all. Thank you to our sponsors, Folgers Coffee. Thank you to Justice Snicker. Thank you to Steve McGinnis. We appreciate you all so very much. Wednesday night, we welcome Todd Clements. We're into October. Haunts of Mackinac. And he's considered to be the go-to person on all strange things on Mackinac Island. I have been to Mackinac Island. My parents honeymooned on Mackinac Island and took us all back as teenagers. So we were just kind of like, this is weird to be back where you had your honeymoon, but it is haunted as heck. And we knew it then. Anyway, he's going to be sharing in some of the stuff he does there. He does the tours there. He's been on Ghost Hunters. He's been on Discovery Channel's Expedition X. He's been on all kinds of different media. So you have to tune in for that. And my dear friend, Mark Ollie, author and UK archaeologist, is going to be discussing the mysteries of ancient Egypt with us on Thursday, I believe. So that will be a blast, as always. So, guys, thank you. I'm going to drop us out for a quick minute, and we're going to sign off and say good night. Have a great all next weekend. I'm just having a day. Bubbles, I need you back, Amelia. I have to do this by myself. So, all right.